Sunday school teacher, I'm glad that you've made the decision to join us and the commitment to join us. Again, let me just say thank you for all you do. As a Sunday school teacher, you're so very important to the life and ministry of your church, and I know you're doing a great job sharing God's Word with those in your class. We're working on preparing Bible study for Sunday, April the 2nd. We're continuing in our series of the Gospel of Matthew. The title of the lesson in the Explore the Bible series is If I Reject Jesus. Matthew chapter 21 is where we're going to be. And the one sentence summary of the lesson thought is this: Jesus is central in God's plan of redemption. He's it. He's God's plan for redemption. Let's look at these verses. I know that this is some passages that you'll be familiar with. When we think about where we are, we live in a time when the idea of being a Christian is almost viewed negatively. We know that this past calendar year was the most difficult year in persecution of Christians. We know that since they've been keeping records, we don't know about before then, but last year more Christians were persecuted than any other time since they've been keeping records. So it is a difficult time for Christians. And the reason for that kind of persecution is the exclusive claims of Christianity. People are not going to respond negatively to you when you say, well, I go to First Baptist Church, or I go to Community Church, or what. They're not going to, they may have an opinion about the church, but they're not going to kill you because you go to the church. But when you begin to make the statement, that the only way to go to heaven is Jesus Christ. If you don't know Him, you're not going to make it to heaven. That's when people get all upset. And that's what we see in this Bible study, in these passages, in this event in Matthew 21. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the people cheered and shouted that Jesus was a prophet. However, when He proclaimed Himself to be the unique Son of God, and if they rejected Him, it would lead to their destruction. That's when the folks began to change their tune, and their reaction became swift and hostile. So we're in that Passion Week. We know what happened Sunday. Jesus rides in on the donkey. On Monday, we know, and we didn't study it, but we know what happened on Monday, and that is that Jesus expels the money changers and the merchants from the temple courts. That happens in chapter 21, verses 12 through 11. And then we come to Tuesday, which is what is known as Teaching Tuesday. Jesus is in the temple, and He's teaching and debating with the Jewish religious leaders. Well, on their way back to Bethany for the evening, Jesus teaches His disciples about the temple's coming destruction and the end of the age. In our session, the passages that we're going to look at, chapter 21, verses 33 through 45, we're going to focus on the parable that Jesus taught on the temple campus prior to returning to Bethany for the evening. It is commonly known as the parable of the vineyard owner. And basically it warned that the religious leaders' rejection, those that Jesus had been debating with during the day, that if they continued to reject Jesus, it would result in them being rejected from God's kingdom. Again, the title of the lesson is If I Reject Jesus. So let's look at the parable of the vineyard owner, Matthew chapter 21, verse 33, and we'll go through verse 37. Listen to another parable. There was a man, a landowner, who planted a vineyard, put a fence around it, and dug a wine press in it, and built a watchtower. He leased it to a tenant farmer and went away. When the grape harvest drew near, he sent his slaves to the farmers to collect his fruit. But the farmers took the slaves, beat one, killed another, and stoned a third. Again, he sent one of his slaves, some of his slaves, more than the first group. And they did the same thing. In other words, they killed them. Finally, he sent his son to them. They'll respect my son, he said. But when the tenant farmers saw the son, they said among themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and take his inheritance." Here we see that the son is sent. Jesus introduced this parable of the landowner who leased a vineyard to a tenant